We got PFL 8 going down this Thursday, and who better to talk about the card than former UFC fighter and PFL commentator Sean O'Connell joining me here on the program. Sean, how are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing awesome. Really looking forward to this card. But before we get into that, I want to talk about you and your commentary gig that you've had with PFL. I think it's very rare in this industry to be universally liked, man. You've been getting a lot of praise. Did you know when you got into commentary that you'd be this successful at it? Because it seems like you're getting a lot of praise.
I thought I would do a good job at it. That's why I wanted to try it out. My day job throughout my entire fighting career was in sports media, and PFL finally gave in when I begged and pleaded and bothered them to letting me try out some play-by-play in season 1, and it worked out nicely. And thankfully, we have an unbelievable production team behind me, and I get to call fights alongside people like Randy Couture and Kenny Florian, and before that, you know, Boss and Eve and all the guys that have been part of the commentary team, Caroline Pierce. It's really been, you know, a team effort that set me up for success, and I'm happy that people like what we're doing, because we work very hard and we try to make it good, and I think that we bring a unique perspective as an all-fighter commentary team that, you know, even the other best crews in the game don't quite have that, and I'm very proud of it.
And I'd agree with everything you just said there. You mentioned trying to, you know, twist their arm to get you to do commentary. Was there a point you thought it might not happen, just with how much you were trying to get them to let you in the booth and do some commentary for them?
Yeah, you know, it was discouraging all the time when I was fighting in the UFC. I'd be like, hey, let me do some work on the desk, or let me try this out. And I just didn't have any name value over there. You know, I wasn't a big enough deal, and it was hard to get on the radar of the real decision makers or be taken seriously by the real decision makers. So that was pretty discouraging, because, you know, these play-by-play gigs, how many are there at major mixed martial arts? There's like 5 major organizations. Yeah. So there's 5 play-by-play guys. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get a shot at this. But I saw the window of opportunity with a startup company in the PFL. They were taking risks in other places. They were doing things differently in other places. And, you know, I just was pretty emphatic with them about the fact that, look, I'm a good fighter, but I'm better in sports media than I am in fighting. That's something I've been doing for, at the time, I guess it was 11 years. I'm like, just give me a shot. And if it doesn't work out, then what happens? Nothing. It costs you nothing. So I'm very grateful for the fact that they took a chance on me. And I think at this point, I can say that their risk was rewarded, because I've done a good enough job that I think it was mutually beneficial.
Yeah, no, it's been great to see. Do you feel like you have, do you feel like you model yourself after anyone? Was there anyone that influenced you in terms of commentary before getting into it? Because I know obviously you've done radio for a long time, but it's a different beast actually doing commentary for mixed martial arts. Yeah,
I think, you know, the challenge is you try and take what other people do well, and you mix it with your own style, if that's a thing. You know, you don't want to just copy other people. So, look, I mean, John Anik's the gold standard in our sport right now. I try and do some of the things that he does well in other, you know, sports at large. I think Mike Tirico is a great example of what commentators should be, play-by-play guys, studio hosts. I think that he's the most versatile guy in the game, and trying to emulate that is probably the loftiest of goals. Joe Davis, who does the Dodgers, is a guy who's come up through the ranks, and he's actually younger than me, but he's really been incredible on college football. He's been amazing since he got that Vin Scully job. I mean, those are impossible shoes to fill, but those are just a couple of the guys that I admire, and hopefully get to put my name next to theirs someday when people talk about great play-by-play guys in sports.
Well, I think you're on the right track. And again, we're looking forward to hearing your voice again on PFL 8, which goes down this Thursday. Main event, it's the Kayla Harrison show, like it usually is whenever she's on a card. Tough opponent here in Fabian, never been finished. How do you look at this fight from a style perspective? Because, you know, I think most people with all Kayla Harrison fights, we're starting to get to that point where it's like, are we ever going to see a second round?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the onus is on everybody else. It's not on Kayla. Kayla doesn't have to do anything different, right? Mm-hmm. Kayla is one of the most physically dominant fighters in their weight class in the entire world, in any division. She is an impressive athlete who continues to improve, keeps getting better, even though, the incentive to get better every day is probably, thinner than it needs to be, because I don't know if she's even really been challenged the same way a lot of fighters at her level have. So Jenna Fabian is a different animal, though. She's 6 feet tall. She's a Muay Thai world champion. Kayla's never fought anyone like Jenna. So this is hopefully a tougher puzzle for Kayla to solve. And, I'm a fight fan. I'm a fan of Kayla. I'm a fan of Jenna, but I'm a fight fan. So I want whatever the best result is. And for me, the best result is the better fighter coming out on top. If that's Kayla once again imposing her will, I have no complaints about that. If that's Jenna Fabian exposing a weakness we didn't know that Kayla had, even better, because it's another storyline for us to tell.
And co-main event, really interesting story here with Jamel Jones, obviously a late replacement into PFL, comes in and wins this fight, and now he has this great opportunity in the co-main event against Bruno Capiloza. What can we expect from this fight? Because there's always something interesting about a guy that sort of comes out of left field and can maybe pull off another upset, so to speak.
Yeah, look, Jamel Jones is a monster when it comes to his athleticism. He's a 2-time JUCO national champion wrestler. He's a guy that has incredible power. We saw the ground and pound on display with those just nasty hammer fists. I mean, that he was generating unique power. We've seen a lot of hammer fists in the sport of MMA, but that was something special we saw. And it's just a brief glimpse. And then Bruno Capiloza is one of those guys who I love this trend in our sport. People who've been killing themselves cutting weight for their entire career. They've been damaging their bodies, trying to get down to a certain weight class. That's what he did when he was at 205 pounds. He goes up to heavyweight. He's 6'3", walks around in the 240-pound range. And now he's putting his speed and power on display in a division against slightly larger guys, and it's really been the best home for him. So I don't think that this one goes to a decision. I would be shocked and amazed if this one sees the distance. And I really couldn't tell you who I think is going to win, because both of these guys have the explosiveness and the ability to spark the other guy out at any moment. And that's kind of what we're going for, right? This is playoff fights. We want those to be razor thin margins. So very excited about that fight as well.
And I mentioned Kayla Harrison getting a lot of first-round finishes. How about Larissa Pacheco? She's sort of followed in those footsteps since losing to Kayla. She's got another, notable opponent taking on this main card. Just your thoughts on that matchup, and could we eventually see Larissa and Kayla again? Because it seems like we're headed in that direction.
Well, yeah, that's the collision course that they both feel like they are on. Larissa takes on, I think, kind of an underrated fighter in Taylor Guardado, who's got incredible wrestling, trains at Extreme Couture, very well coached, takes her coaching very, very well. But you got to give credit to Larissa Pacheco. She's pretty experienced for being so young. She lost twice to Kayla Harrison and realized, look, her specialty was kind of in the physicality and in grappling. And she said, I'm not going to be able to close that gap. I'm not going to be able to out-grapple Kayla Harrison. I am not going to be someone who can be physically stronger than Kayla Harrison. At best, I can kind of match her when it comes to that physicality. So what did she do? She went and she sharpened a tool that Kayla is not necessarily known for. Larissa worked on her striking, worked on the explosiveness and the violence of her striking, worked on putting together better combinations, and so far, she's been successful. She's knocked out her first two opponents, and her striking looks a heck of a lot better, and maybe she's unlocked a new key for herself in the contest, or the eventual potential contest against Kayla Harrison.
Anything else on the card stand out to you, whether it's a fighter or a particular fight that we haven't talked about here that you're excited for?
Well, look, Dennis Goldsoff.
Oh, yeah,
I thought Dennis Goldsoff was going to be at heavyweight against Ante Delia. Delia's a Crow Cop disciple. He's supposed to be the next big thing out of Croatia. He's had a couple missteps along his path, but he's certainly talented. But Dennis Goldsoff has the best jab in the heavyweight division in the whole sport of mixed martial arts. Nobody has a stiffer or faster jab than this man. I mean, put him up there with even the elite of the elite in the UFC. This guy is a completely well-rounded athlete. He's a combat sambo world champion 3 times over, and he's got something to prove, because last year in this juncture, when he got to that semifinal fight against Ali Isaev, he did not pull the trigger. and he ended up getting caught with a big Hail Mary overhand and lost. I thought he was well on his way to a championship in season 2. Well, now he's back to prove that that was a fluke, and he's got all the physical tools necessary to beat any heavyweight fighter on planet Earth. Incredible grappler, that jab I just told you about, incredible timing. He can go the distance. This guy, 6'5". I mean, he's a lean 6'5", 250-pound heavyweight. He's got kind of that Crow Cop type body, or that Stipe Miocic type body, where you're like, well, that's just a larger version of a middleweight. Dennis Goldsoff is a scary, scary man, and I hope we see a bit of a coming out party for him in these semifinals and potentially in the final.
Couple rapid fire questions and we'll get you out of here. You're one of the few retired fighters coming off a win. Any inkling to get back in there? Not going to bare knuckle fighting, right?
No, look, I've always said for the right amount of money, I would come back. But that amount of money is a very large amount if I'm going to convince my family, my wife, that it's a good idea. And if I'm going to convince myself it's a good idea. You already alluded to it. How many fighters get an opportunity to go out on a high note? How many athletes, period, get an opportunity to go out on a high note? It's rare, and I was lucky enough to have that opportunity to take advantage of the chance when it came. I certainly watched some of our light heavyweight fights and say, oh, man, I could beat that guy. Maybe I should hop back in there. Maybe I'd win another $1 million this year. But the reality of the situation is I'm in a very good place. I am exploring this play-by-play thing and trying to be the best in the world at that now. I get to stay close to the sport. And more importantly, I've still got all my faculties about me. And, I got out before any severe brain trauma, at least to my knowledge. I get to remember my daughter and everything that she does. And my second daughter is on the way. So I'm very happy with where I'm at, and I'm happy with the way my story ended. I wish things would have gone better in my UFC career, obviously. I wish that some of the wins that got away from me, I could have a shot in getting those back, but I have learned to compartmentalize that, to put it in the correct box, and I'm happy with the way that my career went and happy with what it has led to here in the PFL.
Where does that fight with Steve Bosse rank in terms of career highlights? I know you didn't win, but that was a fight that really captivated everyone's attention. And a little context, because I was at that fight. It was so hot in the arena. They had the media actually on the football field. I don't know if you remember that. And then also, it was just like, it was so like tightly knit. And it was the dead of summer in Ottawa as well, or close to the summer. What do you remember about that fight, and where does that rank in terms of career moments?
I mean, I loved that fight. That fight was so much fun. I was disappointed that I couldn't put him away in the third round, because I knew if it went to a decision that, he was probably going to get the hometown preferential treatment. And I was, 2 fights in my career, I was on the wrong side of a decision, in my opinion. But it was cool to be remembered for that fight. When I go back and watch it, I'm like, geez, why didn't I recognize in the fight that something was wrong with his left hand and he was only throwing his right, and I probably should have just taken him down once. And, you see all those things in hindsight, but I was very happy and proud that we got the entire arena on its feet, that we got another bonus, and that people still talk about that fight to this day. I mean, that's what we're in this for, to entertain people. And I did so successfully that night. And I wish I would have got the win. I wish Steve and I could have rematched 5 weeks later in my hometown. After that fight, the UFC announced 5 weeks later they were going to Salt Lake City, the only card they've ever done in Salt Lake City. And it was very poorly attended. It was an underwhelming card. And if they would have put us in that fight on a rematch, I think it would have been a different story. But medically, they didn't want us to fight again after that barn burner 5 weeks later. So I have to defer to the doctors on that one.
Is commentating for the UFC sort of the pinnacle in what you're looking to do? I mean, I know you're happy with PFL. We're not saying, you're jumping ship or anything, but is that sort of what you look at in terms of the next stage of your career in broadcasting? Would that be the pinnacle for you, or would it be another sport?
Yeah, the next stage for me is to keep doing this with the PFL, to help elevate the PFL to a status that it's not yet achieved, and hopefully get up to where we're more elbow to elbow with the UFC. And there's certainly a lot of ground to make up in the meantime before people consider us that way. But I think the next stage for me really is hopefully getting some opportunities in college football. That's my first love, and getting opportunities in in some of those other sports, getting opportunities, maybe the next Olympic cycle rolling around with some of the combat sports. That for me is really where I want to take this. I'm very happy in the PFL. I want a larger role in this company. I want to be kind of the face. I want to be instrumental in moving it forward. Hopefully someday I'm the Dana White of the PFL. And every time people have a question about this company, they're coming to me. But, one thing at a time. I gotta make sure that everyone's convinced I'm a great play-by-play guy first. Not just a good one, not just like, it's Anik and then it's him, or it's Anik and then it's whoever, Chiavello and then it's him. I want people to be like, man, he's as good or better than John Anik, and that's the goal right now.
Sean, thanks so much for doing this, man. We're really looking forward to it. It's PFL 8 coming up here on Thursday. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here? I'll give you the floor.
No, just everyone watch it. We're on ESPN this week, ESPN Plus and ESPN, like main ESPN, not ESPN2, the Big Boy Network. Everybody tune in. They're going to be great fights, 9 Eastern. So it's at 6 Pacific. We need the ratings, man. Tune in. We'd love to have you, and I think you'll enjoy the product. They've done a great job here in the PFL of building up the roster. We're only in our 3rd season, and we've gotten some of the biggest names and some great fights and some big upsets and everything you're looking for in MMA. So give us a shot. Just because we're not the brand you're familiar with does not mean we're not a great brand.